Hey, good morning. Welcome so much to our session today for the AMM conference. Today, we will be talking about expanding access to American art in the Midwest. This session will showcase the work museums in the Midwest are doing to increase access to American art through innovative programming, collection loans, exhibitions, and evaluation support from Art Bridges Foundation. Case and study analysis from the Figge Art Museum, the Marshall M. Fredricks Sculpture Museum, and the Grand Rapids Art Museum will serve as a platform to further discuss arts access, how museums can work differently with one another, and funding opportunities available to support these goals. Today, we will conclude with a Q&A and open discussion among the panelists and those of you joining around why this work is important and the impact museums are seeing as a result. My name is Rashida Phillips. I am the Director of Partnerships here at Art Bridges Foundation. I'm here along with all of you to uplift the amazing work of our museum partners in the Midwest. Art Bridges Foundation is the vision of our founder and philanthropist, Alice Walton, and our mission is to expand access to American art throughout the U.S. and its territories. We do this by providing financial and strategic support to museums for exhibition development, collection loans, and programs designed to educate, inspire, and deepen engagement with our local communities. We currently collaborate with more than 240 museums across the U.S., including 53 museums within the 8-state region of the Midwest. We funded nearly 900 projects to date, reaching more than 5.3 million people through our work with our partners. Today, we will focus our conversation on the successes of our Midwest partners. But don't take it from me. We've invited our partner museums to speak on behalf of their own experience. It is my pleasure to present our guest speakers joining us today, who represent these wonderful institutions. With us here, we have Melissa Moore, who is the Interim Executive Director from the Figge Art Museum, Megan McDowell, the Director of the Marshall M. Fredericks Museum, Jennifer Weitzel, and Christopher Bruce Carroll. Jennifer is the Curator of Collections and Exhibitions at Grand Rapids Art Museum, and Christopher is the Deputy Director of Art, Learning, and Engagement at Grand Rapids Art Museum. Thank you all so much for being with us today. Let's dive in. Let's start with Melissa from Figge Art Museum. This Davenport, Iowa museum houses nearly 6,000 works of art spanning from the 16th century to present day and boasts an extensive collection of Haitian, Mexican colonial, and American regionalist art. We are immediately compelled by your mission there, Melissa, transforming the community through the power of art. And you started your partnership with Art Bridges about 3 years ago. How have you used your resources and support provided through our collaboration to inform your current and future initiatives?
Thank you, Rashida. It's a pleasure to be here and to be one of the Art Bridges partners. We're thrilled. The Figge has been fortunate to collaborate with Art Bridges in many ways over the past few years, but today I'm going to focus on our involvement with the Partner Loan Network because we've seen some really cool things come out of that. To start with, from 2022 to 2023, we were able to host artworks from the Joslyn Art Museum as part of this network, and we paired those artworks with our own collection. This allowed visitors to explore contemporary issues relevant to our community and the world in a way that we hadn't done before. So we had been focusing on more traditional gallery installations organized by, say, historical era or medium, and with this pairing, the groupings we were able to do with the Joslyn works, we were able to kind of gauge how visitors would respond to more thematic groupings, and it was overwhelming. So right off the bat, just with the installation access that we had, we were able to really think about how that impact could play a role in future reinstallation of our permanent collection galleries, and we have started doing that, which is really cool. But then when we think about programmatic opportunities, when we organized numerous learning and engagement opportunities, we were able to go beyond what we could have done before without the support of Art Bridges. For example, with this Joslyn, the groupings that we had, we created a community advisory council where diverse community members offered insight into the museum's role and impact. We established a program called Artful Conversations, consisting of in-gallery conversations led by an art therapist. We created a program called Community Voices. This was a mobile audio tour featuring local community voices that were responding to individual artworks. We distributed teacher resource kits, which provided art resources to local teachers for use both in the museum and also in their classrooms. And then we hosted a community open house. This was a farewell event to the installation featuring interdisciplinary programming. This was largely formed and hosted by the Community Advisory Council. So it all kind of came back together for this final open house. So all of these programs were new to us. And like I said, we weren't able to do them without the support of Art Bridges, and not just support, but true partnership. You had talked about the relationship that you have with your partners, and that is a big part of this. These programs really allowed us to experiment with innovation and to look at personally meaningful ways to connect our community members to the museum and the artworks. The learning and engagement opportunities were all well received, but really it's the Community Advisory Council I'd like to share a bit more, because that impact has been really big for us. So for this Community Advisory Council, we worked with local consultants to create an application for potential council members, just to try to get beyond the wonderful partners that we typically engage with. We wanted to expand beyond that. So by working with the consultant, we were able to take applications and with them do some rubric scoring, so that we accepted 12 council members representing a wide range of demographics and a wide range of individuals who had previously not been involved with the museum, but who love art and our community. So pulling together this council was great from an administrative perspective, because we appreciate having the foundational work and the documents from the consultant, which we're able to use moving forward. Programmatically, it's been a delight to work with community members at this deep level, because they've been able to give us valuable feedback about our accessibility, approachability, and really just the general reach of our programs, or lack of in some cases, which has been even more useful to us. Specific to the Jocelyn installation, through the Partner Loan Network, the council developed and helped us facilitate the community open house, which I mentioned. And I should say we've never hosted before such a robust program. Guests really seemed to enjoy exploring the activities. To plan this day, council members spent months learning about the art and then brainstorming ideas for inclusive programming. And staff, meanwhile, spent months getting comfortable letting go of the reins programmatically. For example, the council suggested we bring more humor and noise into the galleries, two things that we didn't mean to exclude, but apparently we hadn't been leaning into as much. So based on this feedback, we worked with 2 local comedians to provide comic tours, which, as you can imagine, were hilarious. And we also placed musical instruments throughout the museum, with signs asking visitors to break the silence and create artful sounds in response to the art they saw in the galleries. There were many more things that we're able to do because of this, but I would say the main takeaway is that we now see just how vital it is to work at a deep level from the planning stage, from the very beginning, with community partners and outside of our normal net. And we wouldn't have been able to do this without this learning and engagement opportunity. So all in all, our participation with all of the Art Bridges programs have been transformational, but especially with the Partner Loan Network. We're grateful to have Art Bridges as a partner, and there are also some unanticipated outcomes that have happened. I would love to keep going, but I know that we have many other colleagues to hear from today. So I think with that, I'll turn it back to you, Rashida, and then of course I can share more or take questions as we get later in the program.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm scribbling away here because I'm so excited about what you've been doing with community, not only for community, but with community, which is so important for our museums to continue to be relevant in today's time. Thank you so much for that. Next up, we've got Megan from the Marshall M. Fredricks Sculpture Museum. This Saginaw, Michigan museum features a unique collection of more than 200 sculptures spanning the 70-year career of sculptor Marshall Fredricks. It also has a special exhibition gallery that features changing exhibitions of international, national, regional, and Michigan artists, a sculpture studio, archives, and a sculpture garden with more than 20 bronze casts of Fredricks sculptures. Megan, can you talk about a specific project that you developed with us that helped increase visitor empathy and give a voice to your local community? Looks like you're still muted there, Megan.
That I was. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I welcome this opportunity to share about our participation with Art Bridges programming and exhibitions. And so thank you for inviting me. And I'm going to talk about one of the 2 exhibitions that we partnered with Art Bridges and our local cohort. It was in the fall of 2023, and we hosted the Art Bridges supported exhibition, Vitality and Continuity, Art in the Experience of Anishinaabe, Inuit, and Pueblo Women. And again, that was part of the Detroit Institute of Arts cohort for the statewide of Michigan. For our museum, it was more the associated programming that was also supported by Art Bridges that allowed us these opportunities to deepen our relationships with the local Anishinaabe community. We had previously partnered with members of the Saginaw Chippewa Tribe of Michigan on another Art Bridges project, which was to develop a land acknowledgement for the city of Saginaw and subsequently Saginaw Valley State University. That's where the museum resides. But for this new exhibition, we launched it with a celebration on Indigenous Peoples Day, and it featured our local tribal members in the unveiling ceremony for the land acknowledgement's physical marker that's at Ojibwe Island Park, along with ceremonial dancing that invited audience members to join in. And then following the event, all were welcome back to the museum for a reception and to enjoy the exhibition. But our partnerships with the local tribe did not stop there. We had additional partnered programming with them that included hosting a couple of their repatriation specialists for an informative talk on the complex issues facing both tribes and museums in addressing NAGPRA laws. The museum also engaged with nearly 100 high school students on the topic of repatriation, along with many other aspects of Anishinaabe culture through an ongoing leadership initiative that this year included free copies of the book Firekeeper's Daughter by Michigan native author Angeline Booley, guided explorations of the exhibition, and then a field trip to Saginaw Chippewa Tribe's Museum and Cultural Center, which is not an opportunity that any of the students in the Saginaw area had been able to take before, and so they really enjoyed that field trip. In addition to hosting Angeline Booley for the author talk, which we partnered with the region's 3 county library systems on, the museum also brought in 2 of the exhibiting artists to share their firsthand experiences and meaning behind their works. Other programming tied to the exhibition included facilitated dialogues, which were co-created with local community members. Again, we had done this process in a different way before when we were working on that land acknowledgement project that was tied to the Art Bridges supported exhibition called Rethinking Monuments. But for this exhibition, we partnered with a group called the Native Justice Coalition, and they participated in one of our museum events by facilitating healing stories in what they call a justice circle. And it was really great to see that program, the room space that we had made available, completely filled up. We had to bring in extra chairs. The audience was very diverse. Some people who had been longtime museum goers of ours, and other people from the community who really haven't been compelled to come to our museum before, but for this program were very compelled. And they reported back that it was a very moving experience to be engaged in that. Ultimately, this exhibition project and its related programming demonstrated many cultures' approaches to community care. In which people could see their experiences affirmed as we hosted programs and events that centered on how other various cultures, in addition to some of our indigenous cultures, how they address healing within their communities. So we worked with local Hispanic and African American communities here in Saginaw, Michigan. This sharing and exploration through co-created programming really created rich and intimate experiences for all, and ultimately helped increase visitor empathy and gave voice to our local communities within our museum. So we really enjoyed all aspects of this participation, and look forward to sharing more about the other exhibition program if it comes up later. So thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Sounds fabulous what you're doing to give rise to Indigenous voices along with other communities there that are important to include into some of those healing practices alongside art. We love to hear this. You know that Alice Walton has a real passion for art and health. And so that's really exciting to see that you all are kind of working also at that intersection along with the community. Thank you so much for sharing that. Jennifer and Christopher at Grand Rapids Art Museum. Your museum houses 6,000 works of art featuring a collection from Renaissance to modern art, including special collections on the 19th and 20th century European and American art. With diverse exhibitions, events, and programming, it serves as an art venue, a resource and educational institution for how community can work with the museum and beyond. Jennifer and Christopher, we'd love to hear from you to talk about how Graham is increasing access to American art through your exhibitions and related programming.
Thanks, Rashida. So our exhibition program here at Graham really relies on traveling exhibitions in order to expand the stories that we're able to tell and to bring new and exciting projects to our community. Not to mention that we present about 15 to 20 exhibition and installation programs every year between our two curators, including myself. So in thinking about expanding access to American art in partnership with Art Bridges, the project that stood out to me was American Perspectives, Stories from the American Folk Art Museum. And this is an exhibition that was organized by the American Folk Art Museum in New York with the exhibition tour support provided by Art Bridges. This was an exhibition that Graham hosted in the summer of 2021. So it's been a few years now, but we learned a lot from the experience that we've continued to bring into our work today. So this exhibition offered an incredible opportunity to explore overlooked or untold histories from the perspective of American folk artists. Many of the creators within the exhibition came from marginalized communities, and their work really served as firsthand testimonial to the history of our nation. So this was the first exhibition in decades here at Graham that we even included folk or self-taught artists. And it was really the first exhibition that we hosted that focused on creating awareness around what folk art is and what it can offer. So through this exhibition, we were able to re-engage many of our existing audiences, and we actually brought our attendance levels at the museum back to what they were prior to the pandemic. So again, this is summer of 2021, and this show had such a great turnout that we're getting our numbers back on track. We saw that visitors appreciated it for its rich variety and scope. And we were reaching new visitors with this exhibition. We saw about 60% of visitors reported that it was their first time visiting the museum. And that's actually significantly higher than our typical rate of first-time visitors, which is closer to 40% usually. And so working with Art Bridges on this program, allowed the American Folk Art Museum to get a lot of their incredible works from their collection out of storage and out into the world, and provided us a great platform to, developing some new programs around this exhibition, which my colleague Christopher is going to talk a bit about.
Thank you, Jen. As Jen mentioned, this exhibition was one of our first major exhibitions following the pandemic. And it taught us a whole heck of a lot of things about how to do our work better differently and in collaboration, not only in collaboration with Art Bridges. And I want to reiterate what we've already said numerous times in that Art Bridges is a partner. It's not a group that's going to send you an exhibition. It's not a group that's going to send you a check to cover that exhibition. They do both of those things. But it doesn't stop there. They're a true partner. We were brainstorming back and forth. They were pushing us, we were pushing them, and we created, magic because of that. And what we developed for the American Folk Art exhibition was what we called Community Week. And it was a week that was designed to break down all barriers to access this exhibition and to make it available to each and every member of our community. And we did that by rethinking program structure, by rethinking museum admission, by rethinking museum hours, by partnering with those groups to build trust. Because we identified very early on that we needed our community members to trust us if they were going to come to us. But why should they trust us if we've never earned that trust before? So we worked with community members directly to somewhat, ride the trust that they had already built into those communities. But we launched a week-long program where every day we had different activities, different speakers, different workshops. Some were during museum public hours so that anyone could participate. Some were during museum closed hours so that groups that were nervous to step out into the community to visit a museum they hadn't visited before could visit it in a safe way where they knew that it was just their group within the institution. And we did this for a full week. We learned so much from it. We learned that we would probably not do a full week in a row again, because that is a lot of work. As Jen alluded, we are a small team. We have 2 curators and 3 educators that were running all of this. But we continue to use these learnings in all of the work that we are doing. So we haven't done a community week since the American Folk Art exhibition, but we do community days, and we are continuing to build relationships with the communities that were first-time visitors then. And now we're seeing them as advocates for our institution, for American art, for folk art, and they're clamoring to come back in many different ways, some of which I'm hoping come up in this open discussion that we're about to have. But I'll throw it back to you, Rashida, to move us along.
Gosh, thank you so much, Jennifer and Chris, for sharing what you've been up to at Graham. You all are sort of throwing out these wonderful ideas around partnership, co-creation, collaboration, and community. It's really just ringing in my ears as this is the best way that we're going to move forward, I think, together as museums. And so appreciative of all of the work that you've put into a firm community. And also folk art, that's a particular passion of mine as well. Really kind of the everydayness of how art making and sort of, making meaning is really important to community to see themselves involved in. And so thank you so much for sharing your experience. Curious, I've got a couple of things here about you all sort of doing like work and want to follow up with some ideas and maybe some responses around that if you all have any. For Graham and Marshall M. Fredricks, you all worked in the DIA cohort, and you mentioned this, Megan, before. Just wondering about your ability to foster those connections among museums. What is it like to be a part of that cohort? Because part of what we do here is to support cohorts of museums, groupings of museums to do work together. So has that shifted any of your ideas around sharing and encouraging art with each other? Has it changed any of your work practices between each other as well?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the cohort program and have been really happy with all of the projects we've collaborated on with. So it's sort of spearheaded by the DIA, but we've come to a place where we're all really contributing something, including a couple of recent exhibitions like Megan was talking about that draw from multiple, museums across the state's permanent collections. And one thing that I think has shifted our perspective here at Graham about partnering with institutions throughout the state is that we are not necessarily competing for audiences. I think there's been that that feeling in the past that, well, we couldn't do the same thing, that the Marshall Fredricks is doing because people will see it there and they won't want to come here, or even with the DIA, that we're somehow like competing for audiences. But through this experience, we've really found that we aren't. And even folks who are, diehard Michigan Museum tourists will visit the same exhibition in different places because they loved it so much the first time, or they want to see it in a different environment. And so from that, cohort experience, we've started collaborating more closely with institutions within the state, because we've seen that that really only creates stronger projects. It isn't really this sort of competing for audiences that it sometimes was in the past.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I would add to all of that for sure. Um, also, for being one of the smaller museums in the cohort, really feeling like we had an equal voice at the table throughout the process was really, nice to participate in, unexpected, but also being able to learn from your peers how they were approaching different things, both during the planning process, and something that I really enjoyed with the cohort process was that there was convening that where all cohort members and participating museums got together at the DIA, and we reflected, we shared. There was definitely some affirming, oh, that happened to me too. But there were tons of new ideas being shared that to take home. So just again, really neat opportunities, things that we expected to hopefully happen by partnering. And there were a lot of unexpected benefits to partnering with both our statewide organizations and again, Art Bridges. So the cohort was really great.
Wonderful. We really are excited about continuing to sort of look at equity, no matter the size of the museum. Our partners are all very important to us. And so to see you all come together in the cohort model is also exciting, to be able to sort of transform what you're doing with each other and within your own museum too.
Rashida,
Figge,
if you don't
yes.
mind, that really made me think about something. The Figge isn't part of the DIA, but we did kind of form this unofficial cohort as part of the partner loan program that we did. So there were three others with the Figge, so four total, who were borrowing from the Jocelyn, plus the Jocelyn itself. And we had all convened in Bentonville for one of the initial kind of meet and greet. Here's the program, here's what it's going to look like. But we ended up meeting virtually just because we were all going to be working with some of the same artists from the Jocelyn's collection. And we brainstormed the learning and engagement opportunities before the application, and it went so well that we continue to meet on a monthly basis to talk about broader museum themes, kind of like what I'm hearing from my colleagues through the DIA program. So there are just always these opportunities that Art Bridges is creating for museums to network with each other, and we don't necessarily know what's going to come of them, but it can have lasting impact. I just wanted to hop in and say that briefly.
Thank you so much. And we really appreciate sharing thought partnership with you all, and also witnessing it between you all with each other. And so it's really important for us to keep those conversations going and keep those practices transforming. So thank you so much, Melissa. I was actually going to ask you a question too, you and for Jennifer and Christopher. Both of you took advantage of one of our traveling exhibitions, which was the Border Cantos. Just curious about how that sort of allowed your visitors the opportunity to connect with those themes of migration, what practices maybe changed after that exhibition that you learned about, and what did you see as a result of hosting that show?
We came into hosting it around a rather heightened polarized time in our community, but also I think at a national and a global level. And so these were themes, we weren't sure how these themes would be received in the community, but we were really excited to just start a conversation that was bigger than the museum and bigger than what people might be talking about in comments on in the news. So what we decided to do with programming was to not focus so much on scripting it, but to take a step back and give opportunities with tools around the museum for people to communicate to us what it was that they wanted to say about the exhibition and their own personal reactions to it, but also we use that to inform future programming toward the end of the exhibition. So I would say two things that were really exciting for us at the time that we hadn't done before. We created these, thanks to Art Bridges, we were able to create these large scale plexiglass surveying devices. So basically like taking tokens or ping pong balls and putting them into whatever the vessel is with the question above. So people were voting and giving feedback on what they felt was most important about community. We also created, this sounds counterintuitive, but we created a wall. So we created a structure with these foam bricks so community members could come and put the foam bricks onto pegs to create this wall that morphed. And what they were putting on the bricks were actually their messages to the community as well as their own personal stories. And we were so heartened to see some of the messages that were put on the bricks as they were building these walls. Messages like humanity has no borders, different is beautiful, build understanding, not walls. So we used this opportunity to really gain feedback from our community and then move forward with programming in more thoughtful and intentional ways while still creating multiple platforms of entry for them to participate.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so we just hosted Border Cantos earlier this year. And for an exhibition, it's been traveling for a while now, it continues to be incredibly relevant. And one of the reasons I was so excited about bringing it to Grand Rapids was that our our community often feels very removed from what's happening along the US-Mexican border. And we are very removed geographically. So most of us will never see, what that place is like, what that experience is like. And this exhibition brought that visually, to West Michigan. And we took the opportunity to partner with local organizations who are working with migrant communities here in Grand Rapids. And we were able to expand upon sort of a tell your migration story interactive, where we asked people within Grand Rapids who had actually made that border crossing themselves to tell their story. And so they had a space within the exhibition where they were able to write out their stories, and were really highlighted in both Spanish and in English. And to provide a voice for those very specific people who are our neighbors right here in our own city. And those partnerships have been really great, and we're continuing them. I'm working on a project just next year that again brings up these themes of migration. And it's great that we had this, this first sort of step into the topic and into creating these partnerships that will be able to sustain through ongoing exhibition programs.
Excellent.
I would like to add just one thing to that. Jen mentioned these ongoing partnerships. One of the great things that we actually started it with the folk art exhibition and continued it with Border Cantos, is we as an institution want to recognize that we have a terrible history of what we call serial dating our own community. When there is an exhibition that makes sense for a part of the community to come see, we go all in with that community and we want to engage them. And then the exhibition leaves us and they don't hear from us for years on end. With the work that we've been doing with Art Bridges, we're looking for ways to continually engage these communities. Yes, when an exhibition makes thematic sense for them, but also when our exhibitions are just interesting and engaging in general. And that's the work that we do. All of this art should be for everyone.
Mhm.
So these opportunities that we've had with Art Bridges have really afforded us the resources needed to continually engage these communities over and over and over again. And I mentioned that with folk art, we did, the whole community week. We learned from that. And with Border Cantos, we did 6 school days that were focused specifically on schools, spread out over 6 weeks. We did 3 public community days. And then we did partner days where we worked with these partners to create opportunities that were specifically for them and their audience, in ways that spoke directly to them because they were involved. So for example, we worked with the West Michigan Hispanic Center to help launch the Share Your Migration Story. So every visitor got to hear a story that came from the Hispanic Center before they left their message. And we asked students and visitors and everyone to engage in this large tapestry of migration. Because as Jen mentioned, yeah, we're far removed from the border, but we do have a very strong and growing migrant community here that often, isn't acknowledged, let alone celebrated. And Border Cantos gave us that opportunity to really share that.
That's really excellent to hear how you all have really been able to engage with community and really pull out some themes that are really relevant to your missions from Border Cantos. I just want to remind folks that we have a variety of traveling exhibitions, and this is what's so important to us to be able to make that available to you all, to be able to really kind of plug in and really expand and deepen your connections. And so that's really, really exciting to hear. I do want to leave a little bit of time for Q&A. I know there's some folks who are joining us. I want to give an opportunity for any of those folks to ask questions of our panelists this morning. And if not, I've scribbled down so much. I can certainly continue to have conversation with you all too about what you're working at with museums. So any of you who are joining us, we've got that Q&A button. If you want to hop in there and ask a question, please feel free. While they're doing that, I can certainly queue up some other ideas that we can talk about too.
I could also just, something that came up as hearing everybody else talk, it's been mentioned, how Art Bridges supports and true partner, and I wanted to take a moment to talk about the values that Art Bridges both holds and lives, and I would say holds others accountable to as well. So for us, it was really exciting to work with a partner, a funding partner, as well as other partner that had shared values that, we could talk about them freely, and that supported those values where sometimes we don't always get grant support for some of the community work that we do. And so it was just really refreshing to see, again, not just listed on a page, but they were part of the conversation all the time. And it was like the real deal. So.
Thank you so much. I mean, we really like being on the journey with you all. So anything from the inception and questions you all have, as you mentioned, stumbling blocks, we're certainly happy to help continue to partner and look at those opportunities as we move forward. And we're excited to be involved. Working with so many partners, where I think we all wish that we could get out to all of you all of the time, but it really is truly exciting to see and hear and learn about what you all are doing with some of our support. I do have a question here. Someone is asking, thank you for sharing these incredible projects. Do you have any advice for museums who are thinking about partnering with Art Bridges? Where and how should we get started?
I'll jump in. Sorry. We had a little hesitancy, I think, to start out, because again, we weren't sure, like, could we do enough? Could we offer enough? We're relatively small staff. Can we really do this? And so I think it really just started from reaching out via like website inquiry buttons, and then from there, the Art Bridges team reached back out and it really began just a conversation. So we've just had really open conversations about like how can we help you? One thing I didn't mention was the Border Contos exhibition that we just hosted at Graham came out of basically an emergency. We had a prior exhibition that was canceled and it was pulled, and I had a big empty spot in my exhibition calendar. And I thought, who can help me with this? And I reached out to Art Bridges and was basically like, I'm so desperate. I don't know what to do. And they were like, we can absolutely help you with this. Like, let's talk it through. Let's find something that's a good fit, that's available, and we can help support. So yeah, just those early conversations have led to a number of different collaborations.
I would say we were also hesitant only because we hadn't done it before. And, anytime you're entering into a relationship with a new funder or partner, however you want to describe it, not all are partners the way that Art Bridges is, you have to take pause and make sure that this is going to be the right path for you to go down, just because there is effort that goes into it. We're a lean staff as well. Almost immediately, though, we realized how going through the conversations that are a large part of the application process for any project that you're going to do was helping shape our best practices back at the Figge. So Art Bridges was asking us questions about certain things and brainstorming with us that really made us question how we were having internal conversations before we made decisions around certain programs and exhibitions. So we have benefited. There's been long-term benefit to how we move forward as a team internally as we're thinking about these things, because of the way that Art Bridges so thoughtfully put together how the relationship is going to be structured. So for anybody with a lean staff who is hesitating, that's normal, but it is definitely worth it. There's no reason not to do this, even though I know it may seem daunting in the beginning because it's something new.
And thank you. We really do support all shapes and sizes, quite honestly. And we invite folks to just reach out if they've got questions or just to start a conversation. We've really been really open to having those conversations with folks and just seeing where you're leading and what excites you all out and about in your communities. Unfortunately, we are at time. I can't believe it's flown by so quickly. I do want to mention that we do have a question about Border Contos and kind of how the community received that and if there's any backlash. So I will reach out to you all separately and kind of maybe get some feedback with that. I want to make sure, I see someone typing a response. Thank you to the Q&A. I don't want to leave anyone out, but I know we're bound a little bit by time and want to stay on track. But thank you so much for all of you who have joined us today. Thank you so much for our panelists who have told just a little bit, about your experience with Art Bridges and some of the exhibitions and some of the community really engagement and growth that you've had at your museums because of your partnerships with us. And this isn't really just to tout us, this is more or less to tout you all. So thank you all for all of the wonderful work that you are doing at your museums to really continue to keep American art growing and more thoughtful and continuing to create more access and engagement for your folks as well. Thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful day, and we look forward to continuing this conversation at a future date. Take care. Bye.